Before clean drinking water, before modern medicine, before written history as we know it, there was beer. Not as a luxury, not as a party drink, but as survival. For thousands of years, humans trusted beer more than water. Entire civilizations were built on it. Workers were paid in it. Gods were worshipped through it. And at times, it was safer to drink than the water flowing through cities. But here's the strange part. Beer wasn't invented by accident. It wasn't just a happy mistake. It evolved alongside us, shaping culture, religion, science, and even the way we live today. So how did a simple fermented drink become one of the most important inventions in human history? This is the story of beer. Long before bars, breweries, or bottles, beer existed in its most primitive form. We're going back over 9,000 years. Somewhere in ancient Mesopotamia, the land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, early humans were beginning to settle down. They were farming, building, organizing society. And with agriculture came grain, barley, wheat, the foundation of early food. But grain has a problem. It doesn't last forever. It spoils, it attracts moisture, and sometimes it ferments. At some point, someone discovered that when grain gets wet, starts to break down, and is left long enough, it creates a strange, bubbling liquid. And instead of throwing it away, they drank it. That was beer, or at least the earliest version of it. It wasn't clear. It wasn't carbonated like today. It was thick, cloudy, almost like porridge. People drank it through straws to avoid the floating bits of grain. But it had something incredibly valuable. It was safe. In a world where water could easily carry deadly bacteria, fermentation killed off many harmful organisms. Beer became a reliable source of hydration and nutrition. In fact, in ancient Sumer, beer was so important that it was considered a daily necessity. Workers were paid in beer. Families brewed their own at home. And there was even a goddess dedicated to it, Ninkasi, the goddess of beer and brewing. There's an ancient Sumerian hymn dedicated to her, and it's not just poetry, actually one of the earliest recorded beer recipes in human history. Think about that. One of the first written records we have is about beer. As civilizations grew, into ancient Egypt, for example, beer only became more central. Egyptian laborers, including those who built the pyramids, were given daily rations of beer. Not as a treat, but as part of their diet. It provided calories. It provided nutrients. It was essential. At this point in history, beer wasn't just a drink. It was food. It was currency. It was culture. And it was about to spread across the world. As time moved forward, beer traveled with humanity. From the Middle East into Europe, brewing traditions evolved. Different regions experimented with ingredients, techniques, and flavors. But one group, surprisingly, would change beer forever: monks. During the Middle Ages, Europe was chaotic. Clean water was rare. Disease was common, and stability was fragile. Monasteries, however, were different. They were centers of knowledge, discipline, and brewing. Monks didn't just drink beer, they perfected it. They approached brewing with precision. They documented recipes. They experimented. They improved consistency. And perhaps most importantly, they made beer safer and better tasting. One of the biggest breakthroughs during this time was the use of hops. Before hops, beer was flavored with a mix of herbs and spices called gruit. It was unpredictable, often inconsistent, and didn't preserve well. Hops changed everything. They added bitterness to balance the sweetness of the grain. But more importantly, they acted as a natural preservative. Beer could now last longer, travel further, stay fresh. This wasn't just a flavor upgrade. It was a technological advancement. Monasteries began producing beer not just for themselves, but for surrounding communities. Beer became a major economic product, and during periods of fasting, monks would even rely on beer as a form of sustenance. Liquid bread. At the same time, brewing slowly began shifting from homes to more organized production. Taverns appeared. Breweries formed. Regulations were introduced. In 1516, something significant happened in Germany. The Reinheitsgebot, or the beer purity law. It stated that beer could only be made from 3 ingredients: water, barley, and hops. Yeast wasn't even understood yet, but it was naturally present in the brewing process. This law wasn't just about purity, it was about control, quality, maintenance, standardization. Beer was no longer just a local craft, it was becoming an industry. But the biggest transformation was still ahead, because beer was about to collide with science. By the time the Industrial Revolution arrived, everything changed. Machines replaced manual labor, cities expanded, production scaled up, and beer went global. Breweries could now produce massive quantities. Bottling became more reliable. Transportation improved. Beer was no longer limited to local consumption. It could be shipped across countries, across continents. But perhaps the most important breakthrough came from science. In the 1800s, scientists began to understand fermentation at a microscopic level. Louis Pasteur discovered that yeast was responsible for turning sugar into alcohol. This changed brewing forever. Beer could now be controlled with precision. No more relying on chance or natural conditions. Brewers could replicate flavors, improve quality, and eliminate contamination. Consistency became the standard. At the same time, refrigeration technology allowed beer to be brewed and stored at lower temperatures. This led to the rise of lager beers, cleaner, crisper, and more stable. Beer styles exploded in variety. Different regions developed their own identities: German lagers, Belgian ales, British stouts, and eventually, large-scale commercial brewing took over. Mass production made beer cheaper, more accessible, and more uniform. Brands became global, but something was lost in the process: individuality, tradition, character. And that brings us to today. In recent decades, something unexpected happened. A rebellion. The craft beer movement. Small, independent brewers began pushing back against mass production. They experimented with bold flavors, unique ingredients, and traditional methods. Beer became creative again, personal again. From fruity IP as to rich stouts, sour ales to experimental hybrids, beer returned to its roots of innovation, but now with thousands of years of knowledge behind it. Today, beer is more than just a drink. It's history in a glass. Every sip connects you to ancient farmers, Egyptian workers, medieval monks, and industrial scientists. It's one of the few things that has stayed with humanity from the very beginning, all the way to now. So the next time you open a beer, think about this. You're not just drinking something refreshing. You're drinking something ancient, something that helped build civilizations, something that survived thousands of years of change, war, innovation, and discovery. Beer didn't just evolve with us. In many ways, it helped shape who we are. And that's what makes it more than just a drink. That's what makes it a story.